Hey everyone, we just wanted to go over a few upcoming episode ideas so that you can submit your questions. We're going to do a star image analysis of Hilary Duff in honor of her new album, which is out after a 10-year musical hiatus. She's touring, she's doing all the podcasts and profiles, and Melody loves her. We have
I
Allie
love her
Jones.
so much.
We have Allie Jones, who writes a fantastic gossip newsletter. And at the end of every issue, she has stuff by Hilary Duff. So I actually have kept up to date somewhat on what Hilary Duff is doing because Allie has kept me updated. But like, what an interesting mid-millennial star image for us to analyze. So send us your questions. We've also got an episode about kid influencers, specifically like how they look back on being a kid influencer, how they grapple with being a person who basically like sells a lifestyle or sells their parents' lifestyle. We're going to be doing this episode with someone who's written a whole book talking to a bunch of former kid influencers. So a ton to unpack here. Just take it wherever you want. And then we're working on an episode about conversion therapy with someone who lived through it and has written a memoir about it. So, what do you want to ask him? Finally, we're also working on a really fun episode about gossip. So, we talk about celebrity gossip a ton on the show. And yes, we will talk about that in some form in this episode. But we're also going to talk about normal people gossip, about old school gossip columns, about the way that just like sitting down and like talking to your friends, like just talking shit to your friends. Like, what does that do? Why do we like doing it? All of that sort of thing. The person who we're going to have as our co host studies specifically the way that gossip columns worked in the historically black newspapers from the 1930s to the 1960s, which is such an interesting period to talk about gossip. So I cannot wait for this episode, but we need your questions as always. So submit all of your questions for all of these episodes or for the Ask Ann Anything segment. We always need your questions for that using the quick and easy submission form, which is at tinyurl.com/culturestudypod. There's always a link in the show notes as well. Okay, thanks everyone. Enjoy today's show. This is the Culture Study Podcast, and I'm Anne Helen Peterson.
And I'm Cat Sebastian, and I write queer romance, including Starship.
Which is your new one that's just come out.
Yes.
If I'm counting right, you've written 21 queer historical romances?
Yeah, that's my count too, is it's 21 or 22. Like I had a Word document that had listed all of them plus their word counts. And then like when I realized I was at like 1,000,000 words, I said, you know what? We're just gonna lose this file. Like we're not opening this document. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It is what it is. It's not my business how many books I've read at this point.
But the one that just came out, it's contemporary, right? I mean, I guess like if it's set, how does one decide what's historical? This is like arguing over what makes something classic rock, right?
Right.
The technical definition for classic rock is 20 years in the past, which means that like In Sync is classic rock.
My daughter was listening to like Smash Mouth or something, okay? and I was informed this was dad music. And like I almost drove off the road. Okay. Like I have and Hootie and the Blowfish. Like it's like what? Like what? Like first of all, like how did those wind up like in the pantheon? Okay.
I mean, Hootie and the Blowfish, I remember this so vividly, was at the very top of Entertainment Weekly's best-selling records in the United States for a year.
Wow.
And just like single after single, they all sounded exactly the same. I love Hootie. But this book comes out within the last 20 years. Can you tell us about it? Like, tell us the plot. I love the cover. I can't wait to read it.
It's a long-running sci-fi show. And
yes.
The two stars of the show hate one another. Or they think they hate one another. They hate one another, but they've been carpooling to work. Okay. It's like really important to the like psyche of one of them, our point of view character, that they hate one another. And when one of them decides to leave the show, he realizes that it's going to look like he was pushed out for just being a jerk, because he kind of is a jerk. And so he decides that what he needs to do is like do a PR stunt, like fake a friendship. Like he's like such good friends with this coworker who he hates. Like it turns out I'm really easy to work with. Look at this, and what ensues is that they turn out to have more in common than they thought.
Ooh, it kind of reminds me of Katherine Heigl, like exiting Grey's Anatomy and being like, "No, I'm friends with everyone.
Yes,
Like
yes.
everyone likes me."
Yes, yes, it happens all the time too. Like where you're like, oh, like I'm sure you're very likable. I'm sure your mom likes you. Like I'm sure it's all good.
Would you describe the vibe of the sci-fi show as more like Battleship Galactica or more like Deep Space Nine? Like, what kind of sci-fi are we talking about here?
Yeah. Okay. So Battlestar Galactica is like what I had in mind in terms of like
Yeah.
I love my spaceship shows, okay, but most of them aren't what you would call like prestige TV, okay?
No,
But like
no.
with Galactica, you get like almost that energy, right? And like it
Oh,
was like
totally.
appointment viewing, like when it first came out.
And I will also say there is a whole quadrant of media studies academics who are obsessed with it,
Yes.
which are often like it's not always a marker of quote unquote quality television, but like there was just a lot
Yeah.
of stuff going on there.
I was fully obsessed. Like
Yeah.
I made my children watch it like a year ago
Yeah.
and
What they think. What they think.
they hated it, but they hate all of my spaceship shows. So like whatever, they like the fact that they didn't like it means it's really good actually. Um
So you have so many huge fans in our audience, but for people who have not read your books,
mhm.
I love how you describe your books just generally. I've seen it a few different places, like different interviews you've done, how you've described it. So I would love to hear. And maybe that's changed. Maybe now you have a new way of describing. But what do you say usually?
Oh, is it sweaters and crying? Like like
The one Melody and I were admiring before was like the vibes to plot ratio
yeah.
is heavy on the vibes.
Yeah, it's like there's just enough plot to like make it stick together, like
Yeah.
just enough to keep the dough like solidified.
Yes.
They have to like what I was I'm doing revisions for my next book and like it came out like a giant mess the way it usually does. And I was telling the
Uh-huh.
editor, like, I just needed the characters to have be doing something while they're falling in love. Like I was like, that's it. Like that's it. Like that is the kernel of like my like journey as a writer is I have to find out what they're doing while like the interpersonal stuff is pretty easy for me to figure out. But like what are they doing? I can't just make them sit in a room and have like conversations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um there has to be something, and that something is nominally a plot.
And I can tell too that you get really into like a time period and are like, oh, the post war newspaper industry was really interesting in New York. And you're like, so let's do that.
That's exactly what it is, where it's like, it's hard. Like there's a chicken and an egg situation here, right?
Yeah.
Like did I
Yeah.
like the book that was about baseball? Is that because I'm into baseball, or was I like into baseball because I was already kind of researching the book? Who knows? We'll never know.
Totally. Totally.
But like that is like part of the fun of writing historical fiction in general is that you can spend a year of your life like doing like immersive research on something that can become your like all-encompassing special interest. And then just at the point when you start to get bored of it, you can pick something else.
Yeah. I love it. Or you can write another book
Right.
there. You can be like,
Yes.
there's still more.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I'm waiting for that to happen. Like usually like usually it's like after a book I'm like really ready to go, other places, other things.
To have characters wear different types of like formal wear and casual wear, like to describe that. Your first book came out a decade ago. What was the landscape of queer stories with historical romance at that time? Like, what do you remember when your books
Yeah.
came out? Like, how did people talk about them?
Okay. So like slightly irritatingly, like the narrative at the time was like this is like the first queer romance like ever written. Like here she is, like she did it, no one's done it, right? And like that's not true. I mean, like people no, it's like it's not even true. Somebody pointed out that it wasn't even true within my publisher, you know. you know? But like there was queer historical romance. It's just that like you had to go looking for it, right?
Mm,
Like you had to know where to look. You had to know where to start the game of follow the links, right? Like
yeah.
you had to be
Yeah.
following the right people on social media. And this is all a very high barrier to entry.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just want to pick up a book. But like
Right.
KJ Charles was writing,
Totally.
Jordan Hawk was writing, and that's like what like I don't if they hadn't been writing what they were writing like set in the past, right? I don't think it would have occurred to me to do it. you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like, and what I had in mind was like something very like when I started to write, I had been reading a lot of like Regency set romances, like a lot, like
Mhm.
back to back.
Mhm.
Never like when my kids were babies, like I basically just had a book in one hand and a baby, like they were all babies at once, basically. You know what I mean? Like and a
Yeah.
baby in the other, and it was like absolutely self medication. And like eventually, it occurred to me, like, wait a second, like there's
Mhm.
no queer people. Everybody's like remarkably mentally well, you know. And
Or they're like they start out like kind of like dark because they had like a tough childhood, but that's magically cured by the love of a good woman.
yes, and like
Uh,
if only, if only there were all these women out there who were like going to going to solve our traumas. But I wanted to like take that like because Regency romance has like there's an energy of shared universe like fandom
yeah,
type of energy where it's like
for sure.
very it is related to history, but it's mostly related to other works of fiction set in this same universe, right? Like
Yep.
rich
Yep.
people, London,
It's
you
drawing on like a collective imaginary
yes,
that exists in our heads.
which is
Yes.
great from like an accessibility standpoint where like you pick up a book and you don't have to if you need to turn off part of your brain, right? You have that
Mhm.
option where you already know where these people are what they're wearing and what they're dancing to and what their day looks like.
Yep.
Um and so I wanted to take that universe and fill it up with like queer people. That's what I wanted to do. And it turns out that once you start doing that, you also wind up having to unpick a lot of other like foundational parts of this universe where
Totally.
it was like, it took me like 5 pages before I realized I found writing about rich people, like privileged people, to be like the least appealing thing. Like being like a rich, like somebody who inherited wealth and privilege was like the least attractive thing a person could be.
Well, and
So
it does though. I think this is a different sort of coziness, right? Is that the coziness of not having to worry about money all the time, and part of the reason why many people seek
yeah,
solace
totally,
in
totally.
these books.
And
Yeah.
it's like, this is also why people read about like billionaire romance and stuff, where it's
What?
just
Yeah.
like, just imagine not having to think about it, right?
Right.
But it turns out when you're writing about, right? So reading a book, that's a couple of hours. Writing a book, like I have to spend many, many months of my life. And I
Yep.
can't spend many, many months of my life with somebody who I want to tie to the train tracks.
Right.
Um,
Right.
like at least not in that particular way. You know what I mean?
And you can't when you have the knowledge of like how colonialism was working in this time, like I would imagine as a writer, if you know all of this stuff, you can't like turn it off
No,
and be like,
no,
oh, we're just gonna like pretend this doesn't
no,
like exist in this world.
right. It's very difficult. It's like it is if you put everybody in outer space, right, where like they have
Right.
different problems, like
Right.
then I have a it's easier for me then to just say like, okay, sure, like he's the space king, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yes,
and I'm just gonna go with that. But
totally.
but like because I don't know the details of like who's being marginalized by that trade agreement.
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
it's,
It's always that's kind of the view I've always loved that about like space dramas, right? Is they can kind of configure these new ideas about how like race
yeah.
works, right? Or like what if we don't have to eat ever? That sort of thing.
Right.
We're going to get to this more in the questions, but I think oftentimes people have been convinced or persuaded by narratives that, like, well, if you wanted to be like grappling with reality or historical reality, then like you could never have someone who's queer. Like they would be, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
just these very blanket narratives
Oh,
that
of
are
course. Or like either that queer people, like got invented in 1985. Like that's always, which is also like that's very
Ellen
strange.
Ellen went on the cover of People
Right.
magazine and then gay people existed.
That's
That is
right. That's
how
how
it
it
happened.
happened. Like I was there. I remember being like, oh, I didn't exist. And then I sprang fully into being.
Right.
Um, but like, and that's always very sweet. And like that's I don't really know what kind of like sheltered life you have to believe that, but like good for you,
Mhm.
you know?
The Culture Study podcast is sponsored by ZocDoc. The other day, a friend was talking to me about how she needed to find a new kids' dentist to get sealants on her young son's teeth. it's just so hard to like figure out, like a lot of the kids' dentists, like maybe they were great when like, I don't know, you were a kid, but it's not the same. Like, do you want to go to some place that like serves the entire family? How can you sort for all this stuff? Like, Google is not really helpful. ZocDoc actually is. ZocDoc is a free app and website that helps you find and book high quality in network doctors so you can find someone you love. We're talking about booking in network appointments with more than 150,000 providers across all 50 states. That includes children's dentists. Whether you're looking for dermatology, primary care, eye care, whatever, there are over 200 specialties offered on ZocDoc, and you can easily search by specialty or symptom to build the care team that's right for you. If you want to see the doctor in person or the dentist, great. Prefer a video visit? Not as possible with dentistry, but you can find what works for you. And you can also view thousands of verified patient reviews to get a real sense of who your doctor is. When you're ready, you can see the real-time availability and click to book instantly. No phone tag, no waiting around. Appointments made through ZocDoc also happen fast, often within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. You can even score same-day appointments. So if you're like my friend and have been just like putting off finding this children's dentist, go to ZocDoc.com/culture to find and instantly book a doctor or dentist that you love today. That's ZocDoc.com/culture. ZocDoc.com/culture. Thank you, ZocDoc, for sponsoring this message. Today's episode is sponsored by Article. Can I tell you something that's kind of funny about my house? There's no full-length mirror. The house is like a weird fishing cabin. I've talked about this before. And also like any wall space is really made for windows because people want to be looking outside and get as much light as possible because it's just not that light here that often because I live in Washington State. The way that I try to look at myself in a full-length mirror is I stand on top of the toilet and then like try to get like the lower half of my body into like the bathroom vanity mirror. It's not a great solution, but I just pulled the trigger on a full-length, beautiful Article mirror that leans against the wall. It's so classy. If you want one too, you just go to Article. We love Article. Every time that we do this ad, we talk about another thing in our house that is Article and that we love. They have so many styles. There's mid-century, coastal, Scandi-inspired, everything. I'm like, this looks great. This goes with this. This also goes with this. And they're super high quality. Everything in our house has lasted so well, avoided chips and dings. And I don't know, like that thing that happens with a couch where it looks like it's 10 years old within 6 months. That's not what happens with Article. Article also offers fast, affordable shipping and assembly all over the US. And this is so huge, all over Canada, with options for professional assembly if you prefer to not touch your furniture in any way until it is fully constructed in your house. You can also get support when you need it with a customer care team that is available 7 days a week, and they actually are helpful. This is not just like an AI bot answering your questions. There's also a 30-day satisfaction guarantee, so you can shop with confidence, knowing that if you're not completely in love with your new furniture, you can easily return it. So if you're in the market for a beautiful new sofa, a dining table, a bed, a lamp, we love the lamps, or a beautiful, classy, full-length mirror, head to article.com. Okay, so our questions are so fantastic. We're going to start with one that's going to open a lot of doors for us from Katie.
Your latest novel, After Hours at Dooryard Books, felt wildly relevant to me. It made me reflect intensely on questions like how we balance personal safety with solidarity, how we intentionally build community, and how we keep or reclaim our values in a corrupt system. When you start writing a historical novel, do you have a clear idea in mind of contemporary themes you plan to explore, or do you just have the plot and characters and the themes emerge organically?
For me, I don't usually start out with like, I definitely don't know what the themes are going to be. And I only have the loosest grasp on who the characters are. I have a setup and a sense of how these characters are going to relate to one another. Like, do they like one another? Do they respect one another? And as I'm writing, I get deep into who the characters are. And then as I'm writing, themes, like patterns crop up. And I'm like, okay, like this is something that's important to the story, to the characters, to me, you know?
Yeah.
And with
Yeah.
Dooryard Books, like it takes place in 1968, which until recently probably like took the record as the worst year in American history. And
Yeah.
and like I wrote the book the first draft in 2023. And I mean, like the politics were there, like the events were there, but
Yeah.
the idea of feeling complicit in
Yeah.
the evils that your country is doing wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I'm revising it last year, like that was all I could think about.
Yep.
And so like, yeah, that made it in. And it also made sense, like given who those characters are and like what they, like that they also would be thinking about that. But I am a writer who writes pretty messily. I delete probably as many words as I write.
Yeah.
And it is by that process of like refining that I figure out like who these people are and what the like who I'm making them. You know what I mean? Like who am I making them? Like how do I make these like words on a page into human beings? And how do I make the things that keep repeating into a theme that's going to be satisfying for the reader without them being hit on the head with like a plank that
Yeah.
says go to a
Right.
protest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like or whatever. You know.
Yeah, just that like didactic, like here's how it connects to the present.
Right.
Like
Right.
a parenthetical without being a parenthetical.
Right.
That to me is so like infantilizing in a
I
way.
don't want it to be prescriptive. And I really, really like one thing that I get very bothered when I'm reading a book and it treats me like someone who doesn't know how to like look at Wikipedia or have a thought or like remember what happened 5 pages ago or whatever. And so
Yeah.
that is something that when I'm writing, I want to make sure that I'm like treating the reader with like that level of respect for their intelligence.
Yeah. No, and one of the things I really like about your books is that like the themes are there with like the vibes, as we say, but they're there in a way that like I'm not necessarily like underlining a sentence and being like, wow, the present, right? Like it's more like I finish the book and then I go on a walk with my dogs and I'm like these ideas are percolating. And that's really nuanced, right? Like that takes like a lot of skill. And I think that's why people return to your books like regardless of the time period again and again.
Well, I mean, I hope so, right? Like that's my long game here.
Yeah. What's your relationship like with your editor? Everyone's is so different. And I think sometimes people have this like really like romanticized understanding of how writers work with editors where they're like going back and like constant communication. But do you think of it as more like refining? Do they flag things that you haven't thought about? How would you describe it?
When I have written a book that that's like good, like when I'm in an ideal world, I can give this like a good book to a B+ book to the editor, and then she will find the things that will help it go to the next level. But sometimes I hand a book to the editor like I'm dropping my car off at the mechanic and just being like, it's going clack, 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 clack. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't know.
Yep.
I don't know,
Yeah.
and like, and it's fun being able like that editors can do both, like it's like the most recent book that I turned in is like very much like it's just making a funny noise. I don't know. Here's a car shaped. It's a
You're like,
car
there's
shaped
something there.
vehicle,
A car shaped vehicle.
And I think that's like that winds up being rewarding for both of us because like we've taken this like lump of trash and we have like made it into a story. This is my third editor that I've worked with, not counting like I've worked with independent editors for like books that I've self-published, right?
Yep.
But I have had the phone call that's like, I kind of think that you gotta like delete this.
Yeah.
Put much more gently. And I've had the phone call that's like, well, what did you think you were accomplishing here? You know what I mean? Like, and like, that's actually great. You know what I mean? Like, I am so glad that they will stop me. They're not going to let me publish something bad. And that is a relief.
And also, sometimes when you are forced to say what you thought you were accomplishing, then you get clarity about what you should actually be writing instead of what you wrote.
I'm always like, Carl, like that is not your business or my business. Like,
What I always tell people about editing, like when you first get your edits back, you need to let you look at them and then you need to walk away and just like you can like go, you're like, how dare they? Right.
Yep.
And then like 12 hours later, you're like, yeah, okay.
12 hours later,
It's
it's like,
fine.
you're a genius. Do you
Yeah,
know
I
what I mean?
know.
Like, you're a genius. You have blessed me and my manuscript, like, with this,
Yeah.
but yeah, at first you're like, you suck, I suck, we're never
Yeah,
talking again.
exactly.
Yeah, it's like, I have been really lucky to work with editors who are able to perceive my vision even when
Yes.
I do not perceive my vision. Like with this most recent one, my editor was like, pointed something out to me that had just been a background fact, which winds up definitely being like one of the like key parts of the story. And like, I just didn't notice. Like, I put it there
Yeah.
like with my little fingers and didn't realize that I was doing something, and she found it. And that's so cool, that we get to do that.
Now listeners can try to figure out what that is in hindsight once they listen to this episode. We'll have like a little game.
And if we've done our job even remotely well, they will not find
You won't be able to find it. Okay, next question comes from Sarah.
Cat Sebastian, you write historicals in a lot of time periods. Post-World War II, Regency, 1960s. What makes a time period ripe for MM romance? Are there any time periods you've tried, but they just didn't work?
Oh, that's a good one. So for me, like the most important thing when I'm picking a setting is that I have to be into it. Like I have to that's it.
Yeah.
Because my boredom threshold is quite low. So if I'm going to be writing a book for a long period of time, there has to be enough in that time period, that setting, for me to really sink my teeth into.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that book is simply never getting written. With a few exceptions, like every now and then I'm like, I can write a medieval. And then I remember I'm like so ignorant about like that. Like absolutely not. That is for other people to do. And then there's a couple where it's just not my lane. Like I don't think the world needs a like white woman to be writing about like the like West in the 1860s or whatever. Like we don't need that. Someone else can write that, And I don't think I'd write a book set in the middle of the AIDS crisis. That just feels like not my lane. But I haven't actually tried to write a book in a period and then have it not work out because of time period's fault. I can't blame the time period for anything that hasn't worked out.
One thing I was thinking about, the most two recent of yours that I've read are We Could Be So Good and Heather Page. And both of them are in these really interesting moments of like masculinity post-war, where there is some like, supposedly everything is fixed, but it's actually very fluid, trying to figure out like, how do we define what manhood is? There's a character in Heather Page that was a deserter, but like, what does that actually mean? Like, how do we define what good manhood looks like? It's just really interesting. There's so much to play with there.
Yeah, especially like I don't know if you've read Alan Barabay's Coming Out Under Fire, but like during World War II in particular, you have this like loosening of standards when it comes to like people maybe look the other way,
Yeah.
Yeah. And then afterwards, there's this like really sad constriction. Like in the US, you have like this whole like you have McCarthyism, you have the lavender scare, and you have this like tightening of what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman. You have this like really like this solidifying, this like temporary, like solidifying of like gender role.
Yep. Total backlash if you think about it, right? Yeah.
That's very like poisonous. And I think that like that it takes its toll, like certainly. And I think that we can all relate to how that would do it. And that is something that interests me. Like when I don't say all of a sudden, but like when sort of the knot tightens,
Yeah.
And also like I like the other end of it too, like where all of a sudden the knot loosens. Like what does that mean? Like when I'm so used to these are the rules, I'm following the rules, like and then all of a sudden there's like a new vista of possibility. That has to be terrifying also.
Yep. I think about this all the time, actually, when it comes to like celebrity, especially male celebrities and being out. How does someone like, let's say like Ricky Martin, right, who became a celebrity and like whose image was really fixed around performance of masculinity, but also was at least technically in the closet, right? Like as time passes, how do you shift your identity to include more of that? But also you're so acclimated to performing self as a closeted person. Like that 2000 would be an interesting time to
yes. And like that whole like 2000, 2005 period where like,
Yeah.
that's like, because also this is like the peak of like Gawker Stalker era.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
You know, and so there's this like, and yet it's before social media, basically, right? And
It's like Perez Hilton
Yep.
outing Lance Bass because he and his reality star boyfriend were wearing the same clothes, like we're sharing clothes. And then that forces Lance Bass to go on the cover of People magazine and be like, I'm gay. Right. But as you said, before social media, really interesting fraught time.
So like celebrities don't have their own platform, really.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. That needs to be like I've read a couple of historical some historical fiction set in that time period, but like I feel like the Crypt Keeper when I think about like, writing, you know, like
well, it's also just a difficult time for me personally.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like why I don't like flare jeans, you know? Like
yes, like this is like where it's my
like I don't want to go back there.
No, like first of all, like I wore those pants when I was like a grown up with a graduate degree. Okay, so like
I know, same.
I was looking at my daughter's pants. I was like, those could be those. She got them at the thrift store. Like those could be my pants. You know, those could be the pants that I wore. You know, like,
yes, exactly.
Like no, I will not borrow them.
Okay, this is a good tee up for our next question. Well, it's an okay tee up. It's a solid tee up for our next question, which is from Camilla.
I am an avid reader of queer historicals, and I'm curious about the dynamic of fantasizing about queer happy endings in historical settings where danger to queer people is often present, especially in the context of today's rising hostility to queerness. I think a lot about the role of stakes in romance, specifically the balance between external constraints and internal emotional barriers to the romance, and how the fantasy of overcoming or resolving these stakes is a big part of what makes romance impactful. In a time when so many queer and trans folks are facing down threats to our civic, existential, and physical safety, what can the fantasy of a queer historical HEA offer? Or, in other words, why is it so comforting, even thrilling, to read about queer romance in the past? Is it the erotics of the closet, secrecy as titillating, or something more nuanced? I would love to hear your and Kat's thoughts.
So much good stuff here. This is a classic culture study reader question.
I love that. Everything about that.
Where does it take you?
I think a lot about like one thing that comes that okay, so like when I started writing like 2015, like I like genuinely believed like we were leaving homophobia like in the rearview mirror. Okay. Like and like and like the current tide of like anti-trans bigotry like hadn't really started in the US. Okay.
Yep.
And like that's like blindingly naive. But one thing that I think about a lot is that like marginalized people have always managed to find like joy and love and community. And doing that is like a strike against oppression. Oppression works best when the people you're trying to oppress don't have joy and love and community. Fascism requires fear, right? It requires despair. And so I think the comfort is knowing that queer people did this before and will keep doing it. But also knowing that the act of finding happiness in whatever form that takes is a strike against the forces that don't want you to have it. I think it's those two forces working together.
Yep. I like some part of fascism to me is like, how dare people who aren't exactly like me be happy?
Yes.
Right.
Like that is like, and you can see it especially when you look at what people are saying about like what people are saying right now about trans people and immigrants. Okay. Like the overlaps there are like, if a writer did that, they would say that it was like too on the nose, you know? And it's very similar to what was said during the civil rights movement and also about gay people, you know, like in the early days of gay liberation. And like, that's not a coincidence. It's because fascism has one language. Like, that's it. Like fascism has one selling point. And it's like, we don't want these people to be happy.
What about the part of the question talking about the erotics of the closet and just like constraints, right? Because I think that in a lot of romances, right? Like that's the narrative tension.
Oh yeah.
And And you see it also, I think, to some extent in like class difference romances, right? And also interracial historical romances. I've seen it. So how do you think about that?
Oh yeah, I mean, for me as a writer, how are we going to do this when the world doesn't want us to do it? It
Yeah.
is sometimes the only external conflict that I need, right? Like I can make the rest of it internal conflict. And I think that like there are many writers who constructed narratives that are like much more based on, I like the erotics of the closet. That's something that I try to step away from personally, mostly because it stresses me out, you know?
Yeah.
Like I can't write a book that's gonna like send me into fits like every time I open the manuscript. But I think that all works together. I think that often it's like the secrecy is what's getting you in the door. That's what's getting the book onto the shelves. And that's what's getting you to open the book. But like that's not going to be enough to sustain the book. Like you've got to have other stuff going on too.
Yeah, absolutely. The Culture Study podcast is sponsored by Z-Biotics Pre-Alcohol. So Lummi Island Dahlias, the Dahlia company I run with my two best friends here on the island, we're having our sale on Saturday. And this is the culmination of like a whole year's worth of work of planting, of growing, of cutting, of digging, of dividing. We have like over 1,500 plants. It's so much work. I love it. I really, really love it, but it's a ton of work. So we're planning a celebration on Saturday. And you know what I'm going to drink first?
Your Z-Biotics pre-alcohol.
Yes, because I am an old who just cannot deal with the way that I usually feel after drinking more than 1.9 drinks on a night. Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. And it's engineered specifically to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Like this is so smart to target millennials who are getting over 40 and like still want to hang out sometimes and have an alcoholic beverage, but also struggle with the effects afterwards. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut, and it's a buildup of this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for rough days after drinking. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. It's just crucial you have to make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and then you'll feel your best the day afterwards. This is my hope for Sunday. March is a marathon of social events, including a Dahlia sale on March 7th. From the slopes to bracket watch parties to Guinness on St. Patrick's Day, pre-alcohol is the tool you need to fully enjoy the end of winter. Go to zbiotics.com/culturestudy to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Culture Study at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/culturestudy and use the code CULTURESTUDY at checkout for 15% off. Today's episode is sponsored by Jones Road Beauty. All right, I've been using Jones Road for several years, which is why when they approached us to do ads, I was like, yes, absolutely, yes. I use the Miracle Balm on my cheeks every day. It just gives me like the very slightest amount of color. I like just a tiny bit that makes me feel like I'm put together. And then I am now obsessed with the shadow stick. They sent me a darker shade one that's like brown that I can use just a slight amount of. And there's one that's more of like a matte. I love it. First of all, it goes on really smoothly. I love that I can just take the stick and then just slightly wipe it over my eyelash, and then I put my eyeliner on over it. Anyone who's familiar with Jones Road knows that like they're marketing straight to people in our demo. And I think a lot of times it's people who just want like some makeup, not a ton.
It's like the epitome of no makeup.
Yeah. But it doesn't make me feel like I'm trying to be too cool girl or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Every time that I wear makeup, I'm like, can everybody tell that it's like I never wear makeup and I'm wearing it today? But Jones Road, it just is like, oh wow, her face just always looks really nice.
I hope you can tell that we actually really love Jones Road Beauty. So if you want makeup that brings out your natural glow instead of hiding it, then Jones Road is the way to go. For a limited time, our listeners are getting a free shimmer face oil on their first purchase when they use code CULTURE at checkout. Just head to jonesroadbeauty.com and use code CULTURE at checkout. After you purchase, they will ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that our show sent you. Next question comes from Julie, and it's about queer romances more broadly and allows us to talk. We didn't do the very typical, why do women write male romances? Oh my gosh, there are many things that have been written about this. I talked about it in he did Rivalry stuff. Every smart article has traced this history. We don't need to talk about this explicitly, but we do need to talk about lesbian romance. So this question comes from Julie.
I would love a discussion about lesbian versus gay queer romance. Why, even as a gay woman, does lesbian romance not feel as intense or well written as queer men? The best sex scenes I read last year for two women was The Safekeep, and that's an intense post-World War II novel. I'm sure some of this is personal preference, but it comes up often at book club and with my queer female and non-binary friends. Thoughts?
Have you read The Safekeep?
The Safekeep is great. I loved it.
Yeah. I know, me too. I was like, this is really hot.
I actually also was complete. It's one of those books where I just thought about it nonstop for
Same.
Weeks after reading it, and wanted to go and gently place it beneath the pillow of everyone I knew.
I kind of did that. I wrote a whole newsletter about it that was this is gonna fucking blow your mind.
Yes.
It's so definitely done. I love it.
Yes.
And also I think revises a period in history that I think a lot of people have a very neat narrative about in terms of what was happening with how Jewish people were reincorporated into daily life after the Holocaust.
And it's every single aspect of that book is layered and messy, and you love to see it, right? It was just anyway, underneath everyone's pillow. Okay, so here is I get this question all the time. Okay, this is and what I generally say is this is my theory. I've been there. Okay, my theory is that this is an issue on the reader end. All right, we are all swimming in a sea of patriarchy, and we're used to seeing men as main characters, and it would take a team of psychiatrists and an exorcist to undo all of that. Okay, and I don't know what to do about that, right? I think that we are in a place where we're seeing so much more super hot lesbian romance, and that's the progress I personally want to see in the world, and this is where I plug Anna Cowan's The Duke, which is coming out really, really soon if it hasn't come.
Ooh.
It takes place in French Revolution and right after the French Revolution in an alternate England where women can inherit titles so the Duke is a woman. Okay.
Yes.
And the Duke is also the worst person you're ever going to meet. Which is borrowing from the tradition of men dukes were the worst person you're ever going to meet. Okay. And so just truly terrible, complete with the daddy issues and all of that, and so hot. I genuinely couldn't believe it. Anna Cowan is actually a gem. Okay. This is basically it's being treated like a debut because it basically is, but she wrote a book, God, 15 years ago, about a duke who cross-dressed and wound up shacking up with a pig farmer. And it was this is to publish that in 2012 or whatever, 2012 when it was the law to be doing Bridgerton. Okay.
Right.
She broke the law for us.
I love this idea too, because it takes a almost this imaginary or other timeline England to allow a female character to have the expansiveness of character, right? Because the ways you could be a woman were so limited.
Yep.
And the way I always see it is oh, this one's spunky, right? And I'm this doesn't do anything for me. Oh, she reads more books than this other one who also read books. Or she goes around and visits the people, the different farmers on the estate. Not interesting.
Yeah. And this is just a horrible asshole. Okay.
I love it.
God, populate all of my books with women who are horrible assholes. Okay. I will pay full retail price. I think that there's another thing going on when it comes to gender that that you like sort of got at there. Okay.
Yeah.
When I started writing, there were quite a few other writers of like romance who were using at the time like she, her pronouns. And then a few years later, they were using they, them pronouns. And now they're using he, him pronouns. And like there is something about reading about queer men that I think is a way to explore the parts of gender and the parts of being a person, okay, that are not usually allowed in narratives about women. And obviously there's like like you and I could we could filibuster on like exceptions to that. You know what I mean? But it is we're used to the patterns that we see. For me, when I write about women, there is something vaguely dysmorphic about it. And like, I don't know what's going on. And I have decided that I will leave that for the afterlife. Okay. Like, I don't know what it is.
And no, that's so interesting, but I get it.
And I realized that I could write the asshole women. Like I could do that. And instead I'm not. And it's like, it feels very uncomfortable. And I'm saying that as someone who doesn't have like, I don't have like a deep relationship with like being a woman in quotation marks, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like,
I
feel like if I'm writing a woman, like I've got to commit to that. Like, what am I, you know what I mean? Like, and it's instead, I will simply not, I will just not do that. I will leave that rock unturned.
This makes me think of a couple of things. And the first is that like, I think the dominant narrative explanation for female fandom of romance is that like it allows women to see men as more vulnerable, right? And that like I get it, right?
Sure,
we see this. And I think that is a huge part of especially like the recent heated rivalry fandom.
Yeah.
But I also think like hearing you describe this, it reminds me too of like this is pretty Freudian, but like a desire for the phallus to like embody this moment, like these positions of power and to identify with these positions of power that are often withheld from us because we are not like our sex organs do not match the sex organs of the protagonist.
You can see that in a lot of the way that like especially like with like heated rivalry has been like a crash course in like how people will recreate gender roles even when you're given like a story about two men. Like it is
totally
like I'm like, wow. Like I got to see it in real time. It's like watching a star be born, you know, like, except I didn't want to see that. You know, like
and that's so interesting too how they are trying to force this onto the actors who play these characters. Yes. Literally, it stars being born.
Yes,
like they're trying to force this understanding of like gender dynamics onto their stars.
Yes,
so interesting.
And when those stars step back, it is perceived as like a violation. Like there's something going on where they broke the rules, they broke the contract. I'm not used to seeing men treated like that, you know? And it's and you know, I'm not on social media right now. So anything that like finds its way to me is either something one of my kids sends me or it is on Tumblr, which I don't even count as social media. You know, like and still I'm seeing this unfold, and it is like it could be 2007 and I'm watching this happen to Benedict Cumberbatch. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, it is like, you know, it is not great, but it is fascinating to see it happen.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like hopefully it leads to not replicas of this, right? Like I think this is like the very like painfully obvious future is like a bunch of heated rivalry knockoffs instead of like how can we explore different dynamics that are also titillating and beautiful and interesting.
Yes.
And undergirded by this very Canadian ethos that is I think at the heart of a lot of it.
Because like I was the last person in the world actually to watch Heated Rivalry because I was really afraid. Like that was like my emotional support novel through like many mental health episodes. And so I was so worried I was going to watch it and then like have to go get a new mental. Like they don't just grow on trees like emotional support novels. And so like what was I going to do? And so I watched it last week. I fell down the stairs and cracked some ribs, and it's
oh my god,
like best possible outcome to that particular fall was a few cracked ribs. And so like, all right. So anyway, I was stuck on the couch And so I was like, we're going to do it. Like, we're pulling the trigger. Like, we're going to watch. Okay. Like, so like several hours later, like I emerged from my fugue state, and I'm like, Academy Awards, like art. Okay. Move. And like the thing that makes it so good, okay, is that it's a big swing, okay? Like nobody was pulling back. No one's being cute. Everyone is serious. Everyone like is giving it their all, and no one is pulling punches. That is the lesson that no one will take from
No one.
nobody, okay? And instead we're going to get wishy-washy, watered down, oh, I hate you too. Like, and that will be, like, we could have had good things,
I know. No, I love that. And also so you watched it like last week? That's
I literally
amazing.
finished it like this morning. Okay. Literally. And I got to the end and I was like, you guys, like we did it. Like, what did we do?
You were at the cottage this morning. That's crazy. Okay, speaking of happy endings, this is a great tee up for our final question. It comes from Jenna.
When you allow characters like Andy and Nick and Eddie and Mark to be deeply loved and fulfilled in worlds that historically denied them that, what does that act of storytelling feel like to you? And has writing those lives changed the way you see queer history, or even the emotional inheritance queer readers carry today?
Oh, I love emotional inheritance. Like, I love that because like there's some like, queer identities, like, some identities you inherit, right? And queerness isn't linear or whatever. You know what I mean? Like you don't like you aren't, I mean, like generally speaking, you're not inheriting it. And like the way that we pass down queer history is through storytelling. One thing that like I often am like really conscious when I'm writing about, but like, okay, like I know I've stacked the decks, right? Like I've stacked the decks in the favor of these guys. And there are people who had the deck stacked against them, right? But I feel like I get to shine a light on the best case scenario.
Yeah.
And people did have that. And that feels good.
I love that. Have you heard from any readers about how these stories have resonated with them, or what it's meant to them to have lives represented in this way?
Yeah, like I mean, the best emails I get are from people who lived through whatever period I'm writing about. Like that's like, I mean, like even when they're like, I got the best email, which was somebody who was like telling me how much like this resonates with me, and they're like, those characters would not have flown on Pan Am, it would have been TWA, and I was like. Oh my God, you're right. But like, I just picked Pan Am. I thought it would be, I didn't know if people would know what TWA was. But it's like, oh God, like that's, what a gift, right? Like when people tell me that they lived through that era, or like I was a kid during that era, or like, like that is awesome. Like I love it. My absolute favorite. And also the other kind of email I really love. I love all the emails I get, even though my inbox is terrible and I don't always respond. Like I was talking about Heated Rivalry being my like emotional support book. Like when someone tells me like I've read this book like 6 times, like I'm like, I feel like I am a healthcare practitioner. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I arrived in the ambulance and saved your life. Like I feel so good about that, Yeah. And that's I think that like that's any writer's favorite thing to hear,
Yeah. Well, and I think this also means that when we're like 60, then we're going to be prepared to read about 2005.
Okay. I will say some of the emails I've gotten they're not looking back fondly. Some of them are like, I don't know how I feel about the fact that you're writing about this. And I'm like, me neither.
So I've seen some of your Hall of Fame queer romance recommendations. But I feel like I love that you told us about the new one's called The Duke, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Anna Cowan, Cowan.
Amazing.
Yeah.
If people have exhausted your catalog, what do you point them towards?
Okay. TJ Alexander. They have A Gentleman's Gentleman, which is one of the characters is a trans man, Regency, strong fairy tale energy, a romp. Okay. Like I really like it was just a pleasure. I'm currently reading When the Tides Held the Moon by Vanessa Vita Kelly, and it is 1910's Coney Island sideshow merman. Okay, I feel like it's all anyone needs to know. I just started it like yesterday, and I haven't gotten far because I'm doing a panel with Vanessa at some point soonish. And I always like to, if I'm doing a panel with somebody, I like to read at least one of their books, and like this is like lovely. And Adriana Herrera, An Island Princess Starts a Scandal, lesbian, late 1800s, really strong Sarah MacLean energy.
Do you have any recs for me? I'm obsessed with classic Hollywood, and there's so many great stories of like what did and didn't happen, and all the scandal rags had like so much good stuff. And I loved like there were words that they used. This is something if you ever want to write a 1940s, like there were specific words in the gossip columns that they would use to deduce like who was actually there as a date and who was there as a friend and that sort of thing.
Okay.
And there's a great biography of a gay columnist named Mike Connolly, who's the gossip columnist for The Hollywood Reporter, and like all the ways that he was hinting at this to an audience that was in the know.
Interesting.
But are there any other recs specifically from classic Hollywood that you can think of?
I am drawing a blank, and that makes me feel like it's not there because I think that the channels would have gotten that book to me personally if it existed.
Right.
That said, I would love to be wrong. Like, what I hope is that you now have like notifications on social media or whatever about the book that's going to change our lives.
Yes, I would love that. I want like a Rock Hudson type that falls in love with a Cary Grant type.
Like, it's not too much to ask. Okay.
No, just like incredible pants wearing. They both were great bands.
You know what? That is true. Not enough people are talking about that.
So you're not on social media right now, but where do you direct people to just find like the cornucopia of your works? Like just your website?
My website, my newsletter, I send it out once a month when I remember. Okay. And like I make sure I include like book recommendations and like it's not just promo. Like my newsletter, like given that the best newsletter in the world is like you still have to like think about whether you're really going to click on it, right? I think my newsletter at least doesn't happen often. Okay.
Yeah. Love it. It's perfect. It's a great recommendation. And one more time, so everyone remembers, the book title and blurb is
Starshipped, and it is sci-fi show actors who hate one another who decide to pretend to be friends.
I also love all the ways that you describe your books. Like on your website, you have like the best little blurbs that actually make me want to read the book instead of like, I don't know. You know how like oftentimes blurbs use the same formula of like a duke ... who doesn't know what he wants, like that sort of thing. Yours are exquisite.
Oh yeah, like I'm marketing my books to people who were on Tumblr in 2012. Like, that's like that's my audience. Like no one wants to talk about that. No one wants to acknowledge it. Okay, but like that's.
Yeah, this was such a joy. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Culture Study Podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts because we have so many great episodes in the works, and I promise you don't want to miss any of them. If you want to suggest a topic, ask a question about the culture that surrounds you, or submit a question for our subscriber-only advice time segment, go to our Google form at tinyurl.com/culturestudypod or check the show notes for a link. And if you want to support the show and get bonus content, head to patreon.com/culturestudy. It's $5 a month or $50 a year, and you'll get ad-free episodes, an exclusive advice time segment, and weekly discussion threads for each episode. The Culture Study Podcast is produced by me, Anne Helen Peterson, and Melody Rowell. Our music is by Poddington Bear. You can find me on Instagram at Anne Helen Peterson, Melody at Melodious47, and the show at Culture Study Pod.